The Creative Coliseum would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on treaty land, referred to as Treaty 4 territory, and that all people here are beneficiaries of this treaty. Treaty 4 encompasses the lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we are committed to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration.
Hello and welcome to the Creative Coliseum podcast.
I'm Allysia, your host, co-host, along with
David Roman.
Yeah, and we are here today to discuss how to make a living from art. And this is something that both of us have figured out how to do, sort of. I should figured out how to do with a little bit of an asterisk, because neither one of us are, unfortunately, rolling in dough from Spotify payouts.
Oh, yeah.
But either way, I think we've still managed to find some success with our musical ventures. So whether you're a musician or an artist or someone who's just maybe at that step where it's like, okay, I see this as the dream, but I don't exactly know, like, how do I bridge that reality of having my day job versus this creative dream. We're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, 100%. But before we do that, we're going to throw to this wonderful ad that this gentleman created for us. He's me. No. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm David Roman from Roman Music YQR. Are you looking for affordable music production services without sacrificing sonic quality? Maybe you're a filmmaker who's looking to heighten the emotional resonance of your film with original music. I can do both of those things for you. I specialize in recording, mixing, mastering, and music composition. I've been at it for over 20 years in various genres like metal, rock, hip-hop, ambient, electronic, and dance music. I'm pretty confident that I can take your project to the next level, and honestly, I just love collaborating with new people. You can email me at romanmusic.yqr@gmail.com, or if you want to see more of my past work, you can look at soundcloud.com/romanmusicyqr. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I'm looking forward to collaborating. Roman Music YQR, moody music for the masses.
Okay,
right.
So I guess the first thing that I wanted to start with in today's episode is to talk about how we did it. So some of you might know me, some of you might know Dave or not, and I think it would just help to maybe lay out what the steps were to go from working a day job to working an artistic career, let's say.
Yeah.
So Dave, how'd you do it?
All right, step one. No, be born. No,
Be born. We're going way back, guys.
We're going way back. You know, I wish there was an easy roadmap. I think, I guess I have taught this to other people in some capacity. Like I've done workshops on, being a business entrepreneur or a creative entrepreneur. But yeah, like, there's no real easy roadmap. I think the first thing really is, what's your idea? Why do you want to do this? Like I think most people, when they come into the arts world, they're thinking like, I'm going to be a famous this. I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be a TikTok influencer. I'm going to be a musician, and I'm going to be famous. And that's the career that people want initially. 0.0000 whatever percent of you are going to do that, right? And but we all wanted that, so
we're crushing dreams, guys.
We're crushing dreams.
So I don't know if you had anything like this. When I was, 13 or however old, for many years of my life, my nighttime ritual as I was falling asleep was to imagine all kinds of elaborate scenarios where I was performing on stage to the beloved masses. Mm-hmm. I had a fantasy of fame from a very, very young age, and I think that somewhere down the line, reality batters into you a different story. I don't know if you had anything like that when you were young.
Yeah. I probably pretended to perform in front of people a lot when I was little. Having pretend concerts and things like that. Or I used to actually have a pretend radio show. That was one of the things I did.
So did I.
So did you?
Radio shows? Well, now look at us.
I know. Now we're
living the dream, Dave.
But actually, though, no, being able to do this kind of creative work is very much.
Tell me about your radio show.
It was called CJT. No. DAVR Roman. That was my call tag. It was something like that.
Okay.
And it would go back and forth between me talking about I don't know, like doing skits, like we did like a Beavis and Butthead skit or
Nice.
something like that. And then, mixing in music here and there. Like I had a bunch of different segments. I was kind of inspired by like Cheech and Chong. and like, I don't know if you ever heard like what was there? They had a tape that had skits and then it would go to songs and then would go to skits. And I can't remember what it was called. But I had this cassette tape and I was probably too young for it. But I love that vibe of mixing those things. They go, that was the one that had the song Basketball Jones. It's a really famous Cheech and Chong song. So I go, Basketball Jones, that whole thing. And it was kind of a skit too, but it was a song. And then we're going into a skit and then we're going back to a song.
Did you record them on cassette tapes?
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Yes,
Yeah.
so did we.
I don't remember any of it. But
Yeah.
tell me what your...
Well, ours was basically just we were two news anchors and we were 90-year-old women who were from the South. So we'd just really be talking in these cranky old Southern voices, getting really riled up and such. And then we'd play our Backstreet Boys, Spice Girls jams and get back to it.
That's amazing. Did you have the tech to because what I had to do was like rig two different cassette players together so that I could record to one.
No, that's like way more. We just had the one. We had a single track. We just recorded right onto that tape.
Yeah. See, I feel like I wish somebody would have told me at a very young age that was the field I should be in, because I was really young and I was rigging up these weird devices to do things for me. I was like video editing before I had anything to video edit with too. I was like multiple VCRs
But that's not sexy. Right.
No.
So, and I'm really curious about that because one of the things I think we're going to talk about today is how the dream evolves or takes different shapes. So I don't know about like most 13-year-olds, maybe some do, probably some do, but like a lot of them are imagining themselves with a guitar on stage doing some crazy licks or something. Not a lot of people are like fantasizing about sitting in a room or a basement being an audio engineer. So a lot of times our dreams morph, right? Where we have this idea where we want to be this famous rock star, but then we end up being a successful entrepreneur who records music for other people.
Yeah, and I think that really goes well into what I was thinking about, we were talking about step one, but it's, so people have the big elaborate idea, but then you just mentioned like the real career thing, like a lot of people get involved in audio engineering or in production or things like that. And there's a lot more jobs in that than there are in being Taylor Swift, So at some point, your dream does evolve and does change. And I think as you get older and have more experience, you can start to see like, where are the areas that I fit into? And that really is, as a creative entrepreneur, I think the first thing that really happens is I think you start to see like, I want to do this part of it. I want to, for me, it was audio engineering. It was initially I thought I was going to record bands and mix them and put them out. And I did a bit of that. And then that even evolved as I got into that audio engineering piece. Then I started to see what other specific areas I could focus on, like podcasting or film audio or things like that. So, you start with a big idea, but then I think you start narrowing it down as time goes on, as you get older.
And part of that relates to what you said earlier, what we were talking about, like what's the why? And I think a lot of times when we're immature, the why is something. For me, I was driven by hatred, actually, like for a lot of it. My why was like, I hate these people and I want them to hear me on the radio one day.
Oh, damn. Yes. Am I still driven by that?
Yeah, no kidding. Driven by rage.
That's why I make music, I think, sometimes. But anyway,
right. Yeah. But I think, at least for me, it's shifted a little bit. I feel less of that, and more of just a desire to lean into what I'm good at and what I'm kind of naturally adept at.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point. And I think that comes with maturity. I think it's just, why I wanted to do the audio engineering thing, why I wanted to do the sound designing thing is because you're right. I was good at it. I had interest in it. And then other people would tell me I was good at it. Right. And I started feeling comfortable and I was like, this is something that I just can naturally do. It's not, I feel like almost, art is difficult at times. It does involve a lot of skill and technique, but sometimes when you're doing it as a career, you got to find that area of it that it doesn't feel as like strenuous. It's kind of a hard thing to understand until you're in it. But I feel like it gets to the point now where it's like riding a bike for me, right? When I sit down and do audio engineering, like, yeah, it is difficult and it's complex and it took me a long time to get to that point. But the way my mind works and the way my skill set is, like, that just naturally played into that growth, you know? So I would highly recommend, if you're going to be a creative entrepreneur, it's got to be in something that you actually really are like into and positive about. And yeah, it's not going to be perfect. Again, if I had my way, I would be Twitch streaming all day playing video games, like, and getting paid for that. And if I could make that career, awesome. But it should be still something that makes sense for your skill set, for your comforts, like all those different things, you know. And not to say people shouldn't challenge themselves or try different things, but just, yeah, be really cognizant of where you're starting to align, you know, like let it happen.
And this is a big thing that I want to talk about a little later today as well, is the idea of being good at something is probably your most precious commodity.
Yes.
It's not just what you want to be good at. I mean, everyone wants to be good at like that charismatic stage performer kind of 0.0001% Taylor Swift thing. But then there's this, like, you know, take a cold hard look in the mirror. What are you actually good at?
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into that too much. I just, not yet anyway, but I want to get a sense of your journey. So when did you make it, Dave? When did you make it?
When did we make it?
Yeah.
I love the word make it. It's just so like, do we ever make it? I don't know. You know, here's the thing about me is I am, and you've known this from past episodes, you know, I'm all over the place. I'm so like squirrel, you know, I see a squirrel and I go after that squirrel. So it is kind of hard to pinpoint like what getting to what point means I've arrived, you know? But I do think that really one of the biggest milestones, I guess I could say I had, was when I got to quit my job just to do what I was doing in my business, right? And at the time I was doing some music, I was doing more film, a lot more film audio. And like you say, like, that's what I was good at, right? That's what I was really good at. Film audio was my number one. I still think I'm a way better film audio engineer than I am a music engineer. And I know a lot of people would hear that and go, what? Because, you know, they like what I do. But no, I actually feel way better at film and podcasting than I do with music. So yeah, I think when I was doing that, my business was full-time. I was doing mostly film and some podcasting and some music. And yeah, like suddenly every day was all my energy and all my time was invested just in that for work, right? So that probably is the moment.
When did you hit that point?
Man, it was years ago. I'm trying to remember. It happened a couple times because, you know, like I'm the kind of person that likes to just ebb and flow a bit.
You get kind of over it, and then you do something else, and then you come back to it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like you can always pick it up again whenever you're up to it again. Like, you don't have to, just because you're in this one way of operating as a business or whatever, you don't have to stay there forever. And in fact, I would recommend not doing that. I would recommend, you know, trying new things and diversifying and going different directions, just because at some point you can get kind of stale doing the same thing over and over and over for a long period of time. So at least for me, it seems to happen in a shorter period of time. I get really stale quick, but
Squirrel.
Yeah, 100%, right? And this is why I've gotten so good at other things, and I've taken, like, now I'm not doing a creative business anymore. Well, I am. Part of me is doing that, but I'm still working in the arts world, and I found, you know, a career in more of the digital media realm, right? And because I realized I really enjoy learning and teaching and just constantly expanding my digital skill sets, you know?
Yeah, well, I have a similar drive, so that I think the love of learning is what perpetuates the squirrel thing, because it does get old. And what I found, and maybe this is true for you too, I'm a lot more consistent than you. So this is one thing I think we discovered in one of our last episodes, because I've been teaching piano almost continuously for about 20 years, roughly, maybe like 17 years or something like that. Maybe with just a minor interruption in there. But what I found is by injecting other things along the way and also changing the way in which I teach. So, for example, like right now I'm going to university, and the ability to learn something new, even if it's not directly related to piano, makes me a way better teacher, because I'm just, there's something about chewing on new information, new ideas. You think about different ways to do the thing you're already doing.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's specific to teaching, or it's just, you grow as a person. Maybe you're also happier if you're in this kind of state of learning.
I think that's where you and I cross over the most then, is our interest in expanding our horizons a bit, right?
And it's not even just an interest; it's almost like a need.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I've been off sick for a while from work, and that's been the only thing I've really been doing while I've been off sick has been like learning more. I learned how to multi-stream on Twitch, and I learned how to do all this other stuff. Like I just taking in new things, right? So I'm curious about, because I haven't heard a lot about your story with Piano TV. I mean, I know you were, a YouTube star, and then and then
Such a star.
well, I mean, you got a lot of subscribers for a local person. So, I guess for you, what was the moment then that you arrived, or what was that trajectory for you? Because I mean, being a YouTube content creator is quite different than saying I'm going to run a school for piano people, like they are kind of different, like they're related, but very different paths.
Well, the idea to become like a YouTube star and be up there with the greats or whatever is really tonally similar to the dream of being on stage.
Yes.
And, millions of adoring fans. So when I was in my mid-20s, I had the idea YouTube was surging. I think I started my channel in 2015, but YouTube really started becoming a big thing in the 2010s. And I had a sense that I wanted to join that wave. And a lot of it was just this like, I just want to I want to perform. I want to be in front of people. And this is one way that I can be in front of people. So this is, again, like dreams meet reality, where I thought like, I'll have millions of subscribers one day. That's what I'm aiming for. And
Mr. Beast. Yeah,
Mr. Beast, exactly.
Of piano.
Yeah. And I'm just like comfortably sitting at, I don't know, like 150,000 or something like that. So it's not like a massive audience by any stretch of the imagination. And what I was interested in doing started morphing, because I was thinking, okay, I don't want to make meme videos. I hate video editing. In fact, almost everything technically related to the video creation, I hate. I like teaching. I like talking to people. I like lecturing and giving direct, specific feedback. I started figuring out like, oh, these are the things that I'm actually good at. So within the idea of YouTube, I was like, okay, I am not a Mr. Beast. I will never be a Mr. Beast, and I got to let that go and lean into more the stuff that felt like it would connect me more with actual human beings.
Yeah.
And there's something really satisfying about that, because I have students. I have something like 200 plus students across my group classes. But I recognize their faces and their pianos, and I see their blurbs and updates and stuff. And it's not the same thing as like the anonymous YouTube comment blob section. So it's more meaningful in that way.
Yeah. That's that's a really good point. And I think it still connects to the idea of like, what are you naturally good at? Where do you fall in, connecting to people and you're saying like teaching them or like there is something really fulfilling about having that interaction and then seeing where it goes. And if that's something you're just naturally inclined to do, then that makes sense to pivot more into there than, like you say, instead of I'm PewDiePie. I'm Mr. Beast.
Exactly.
And I can relate to that, because part of me would love to be like this epic content creator. And I actually do enjoy the editing and the creating.
Oh yeah, that's your side.
I almost enjoy that more than the performing side, unfortunately. So maybe we're on to something. Maybe we need to like I feel like I can understand that when you start to like realize like where is my value in this? How am I going to connect to somebody? What am I doing here? Because I've had the same moment with me and my streaming and with Nerd Party Gamers. Which, it's a pretty humble channel at this point, but it is monetized and we have regular viewers. I've found out what my vibe is, and it's not what I was going for initially. My vibe is that I'm a dad, and I'm like a cool dad that people like to connect with. So a lot of my audience is like young kids. Like a lot of my audience is like 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds who are like, hey, I'm going to come game with this guy, and we're going to play Warzone together.
Yeah.
And
are like basically people like your son's age and stuff.
Exactly. Right. And they just gravitate towards me. And I didn't try to make that the demographic I was targeting. For me, it was just going to be fun, goofy, like whatever. So that's what it's latched onto. And then I've recognized that, I have an opportunity here, like you say, to connect with somebody and provide something of value. And so I should probably pursue that. And I'm enjoying it. I like it when I do that. I feel good when I do that. And so here we go back to our, how do you get to that part of being a creative entrepreneur? Well, you got to follow those little moments, those intuitions where you start to realize what you're good at, what makes sense for you, what makes you feel good, what value you're providing. All those questions come into play when you start, morphing your business into something that makes sense.
Well, and I have an extremely similar thing in the sense that when I first started creating videos, I don't know who I imagined my audience to be. I had no idea. I thought maybe just people like me, but it turns out that my audience is largely comprised of retired adults. And it makes perfect sense. I never even thought about that before. But obviously, the people who have the most time to learn piano, probably little kids who are getting forced into it by their parents. I've done that before. But also adults who retire and they're like, I love music. I never had time for it. I was raising a family. And now I actually do have time for it. So let's clear a space. And then seeing that and leaning into it. And I feel incredibly lucky. By the way, I should say, like, teaching retired adults is like, I would not prefer it any other way. I get beautiful emails from people. People like really care and, will write multi-paragraph emails to me in a way that, I don't know, young people don't communicate like that.
No.
It's really kind of quick, one sentence kind of things. And that's obviously not my entire audience. I've got people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, et cetera.
Sure.
But I love that. And to your point, once you... I'm going to just back up a little bit because I think one thing that has been kind of my North Star reminder is that you need to take action and then see what happens. It's not like any of this could be dreamed up beforehand.
Yes.
You take the step, you're like, okay, I'll just start doing videos. Oh, there's lots of retired people who watch. Then that kind of informs the next step, which informs the next step. And a lot of artists or would-be artists and entrepreneurs, I think, just sit in this constant perpetual marination stage where they're like trying to think of all the thousand scenarios.
I love that you say that, the marination stage. Yeah, like, because you can get really paralyzed in trying to come up with the perfect approach and the perfect thing. So you try, you adapt, And it's not to say doing that in a sense of like, I'm selling out, whatever is going to make me money, I'm going to do it. It's not really that as much as it is like, just understanding where our talents kind of take us and we're going to do better in those areas, and we're probably going to enjoy that more anyway. Like, I wouldn't have ever predicted when I started my entrepreneurial journey that I would now love doing this, that I would now like love setting up a huge live stream production.
Exactly.
That was not in my trajectory at all. I didn't even think, I had no plan for that. My plan was very simple. It was like, buy a bunch of microphones and an interface, record some bands, mix them, be cool. That was kind of it. And man, I don't do that at all anymore. In fact, that's like the thing I like the least. Is like sitting with a band for a week and setting up a bunch of microphones. Like I don't hate it, but it's not. I don't think about it. Like,
even though that might have been the original dream.
That was the original dream, right? Yeah.
And actually, I just also to mention, and this is kind of what you were saying too. I think I made it a couple times, and so one of the reason I'm going to give timestamps on this is because I want to maybe help set some realistic expectations on when you start an idea versus when it actually starts paying off. So I feel like I actually made it probably by the end of 2020. And so I'd been doing piano TV for 5 years by then. And by the end of 2020, it was my full-time job. I was successful with the courses that I was launching all through 2020. And that's when it was really, I finally finished teaching one-on-one lessons. And that felt like a massive step. And then I've been able to do that ever since. But again, there was a 5-year lag time that I had to be patient through. I kept teaching to help sustain and support it. But there was an earlier making it, and I think this timeline's also relevant. So I started teaching piano in about 2007, and I was getting by, making a living. I worked at a company, Long and McQuaid, and I made enough. It was fine. But it wasn't my own. It wasn't something that I controlled. It wasn't my business.
Right.
But when I moved to Toronto and I had no job and I had to start putting up posters to be a piano teacher because I had no other way to make income. And then I managed to fill my studio within 3 months. And I was making more than I had at Long and McQuaid, and it was my own practice. And then later, having my own home studio, that was the first making it, right? Where I finally set out on my own and was in complete control of my earnings and my business. So that lag time would have been like a lot longer. I'm just trying to do quick math, like 7 years or 8 years from starting to teach piano and having my first legs experience to being able to venture out and do it on my own.
Right.
So one of the big points I want to make, and this has to do with being good at things, is you need to factor in that nothing is going to be instantaneous, and building real genuine skills for most things takes a lot of years. It takes a lot of time. Unless you're fortunate enough to just drop everything and commit like 80 hours a week to one thing, you could probably speed run it that way. But most people have to juggle families and other work they can't just drop everything to do the one thing right away. The one thing is the thing that comes along after you've been working on it for a while, and you slowly, bit by bit, drop the day job as you do it.
100%. Yeah. I've shared this a lot. Maybe, I don't know if I shared it on this podcast, but the idea that when I was starting to get really good at audio engineering, like that was the first goal, right? And it was like every day I was picking up little bits. I remember I was at work and I had this audio textbook, and I decided, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I looked at how other people succeeded, and I was like, I'm going to have to carve out time, and that's going to mean giving up a few things, So I spent my lunches reading this book and making notes. And that's what I did for, I don't even know how long, it might have been years, to be honest. And just learning a little bit every day. And then I would, when I'd have free time at home, I would, record something and mix. And man, a lot of frustrating days, a lot of terribly frustrating days. But it just kept building on itself and building on itself. And it wasn't that, again, it's one of those things where it's something that I know I wanted to do, and I enjoyed doing it clearly, or I wouldn't have stuck with it that long. But yeah, I had to really persevere. And I think that sometimes separates the people who are successful from not, is how much are you willing to persevere to get to the point you want to be at. It's not for everybody. It isn't. And there's no like guilt in giving up and deciding to do something else. There just isn't.
Perseverance and flexibility, though. Because on the other hand, you probably know people like this as well. People who have been pushing to be an artist for like 10 years, 20 years, and they grind it out hard and they don't give up, but they don't maybe adapt to kind of what we've been talking about. Maybe if you're grinding it out for 10 years and you're not getting a payoff, maybe that's not the thing.
Yeah,
maybe there's a peripheral thing.
No, that's a really good point. Like you need to assess, if you do need to stop and assess your efforts sometimes. And so it's like the working really hard at it, part of it is important. The reassessment is important. And then, like you say, the flexibility then to make that adjustment. And so I would do that for sure. I think that's what I did throughout my career a lot. I get to a certain point and go, this isn't really working for me anymore.
Yeah, so maybe there's some self-awareness that's required in this as well.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are blinded by the dream. I really, 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 really want to do this without being able to look critically at what they're doing and seeing, is this giving people value? Is this actually something that I'm good at, or am I just okay at it?
Yeah. And you know what? Again, if you get to a point where you realize, I can't do it, I can't do this, there's no shame in that.
Right.
There's no shame in adjusting and being something different. It's okay. It's okay if you quotes unquote failed at it,
Sunk cost fallacy for some people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I also think it's important to just sometimes you might get to a certain point where you realize, guess what? My art is just for enjoyment. And that's fine too. Like not everybody has to make money doing this. They don't. It'd be great if everybody who loved art could find the time to do that in some capacity and still eat. Like that'd be wonderful.
Well, this is a really good point to bring up, because one of the things I wanted to talk about with you is the idea of making money, and I kind of alluded to this, making money on the art itself. So the song or the painting, versus making money from something related to it, but not directly it.
Yes.
So for example, I don't make money as a musician. I make money as a piano teacher.
Yeah.
And you don't make money as a musician. You make money as I guess.
Sometimes I do.
Sometimes you do. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. This is part of the flexibility that you're talking about. I mean, again, it's not everybody is going to get to a point where the art itself is what is the product. And even if you do, there's no guarantee that isn't going to have some kind of other people involved in it. Like a really popular artist has a production team, there's money, there's labels, there's all kinds of things going on. You don't make your decisions in a vacuum. You don't just get to do whatever you want, and then everybody else just takes it and makes money. Unless maybe you're really successful and you have a lot of power, and you're able to just dictate what's going on. Sure, but most people, that's not their reality. If you can get to that point, awesome. So yeah, there has to be a certain amount of flexibility in terms of what is this thing? What is it going to be? You say, what value is it going to provide? You can't just be rigid and go, oh, it has to be this way. I have to do it this way. And this is all I want to do. I would love to get to that point, but it's just never gotten to that point. So I've taken chunks. I've taken almost I call it like breadcrumbs in some ways, but it's maybe bigger than breadcrumbs. But I've been offered, okay, hey, you want to do this score for my film? Well, I wasn't purposely writing a score. That wasn't what I planned on doing, but I do like writing scores. And hey, I like the vibe of your film, so I get to be fairly creative, and it's my piece, And yeah, there's a collaboration, but it is my piece in the end. I'll take the ability to do that then sometimes, while also supplementing it with other things, right? So, maybe my favorite thing in the world isn't sitting at a board with somebody and helping their music sound better. That isn't my favorite thing to do, but it's not all I do. So, I get to teach, I get to do some things. I like teaching, don't get me wrong. I like teaching. I'm not really a big fan of being somebody's audio engineer. That's not my favorite thing. It's the teaching part is actually the part I enjoy more. But yeah, so I can do those kinds of things in the creative field while at the same time having time for those other artistic projects, creating a score, maybe collaborating and writing a song for somebody. But definitely the majority of the time when I've been able to make my own art for work has been as a film scorer.
Yeah, well, and I think the value that gets created, so monetary value it correlates with the value that someone thinks you provide, rightly, wrongly, whatever.
Yeah.
So people will often find the peripheral skills more valuable than the art itself, because music is, a dime a dozen, everyone's an artist, etc. So you have to be a really particular kind of person to make, and you totally could be, but to make music that people find valuable. But one thing that I find is there's a contribution aspect to this that makes, so as with you, piano teaching isn't the ultimate thing that I dreamed of or something. I don't wake up feeling oh yeah, I'm so stoked. I like it. It's good. But the thing that makes it worthwhile to do, and the reason that I keep doing it, and I probably will continue doing it for a long time, is because it makes, I see that it makes people's lives better, even in a small way, because of the feedback they give, because of this reciprocal relationship. So I think it's really more important, not even just talking about monetary value now, but not just to do things and choose things to do just because they're fun. I don't choose to teach piano because I'm playing all day long and this is just the funnest thing that I can think of.
Yeah.
It's for an action to have moral worth, it must be done from a sense of duty or from a sense of responsibility. And that, I think, is where the juice of it is. So for someone who is watching this and thinking, or listening to this and thinking, oh, these guys are just second-rate musicians. They never made it. So now they're just talking about their failures because they had to switch to other things. I think that's really missing the point.
Yeah, totally. And unfortunately, the prevailing attitude is that, as you just said, every time I hear these major artists who made it and their stories, sometimes the way they talk about it is almost unrealistic and kind of setting people up for disappointment and failure in a lot of ways. And it's not to be poo-poo in everybody's parade and be mean about it, but it's just, you're, again, it's not just this big, wonderful, perfect adventure all the time. There's, like you say, there's work, there's things I don't enjoy as much as others, there's all that kind of stuff. But like any other job, you're not going to like everything about it. You're not. There's even service jobs that I found really enjoyable, and it wasn't my dream to be doing that service job. It wasn't I'm going to pump gas when I grow up. But I really like doing it. So the same thing goes for the arts fields. There's a lot of different jobs, and there's going to be parts of it you're not as thrilled about as others. But I really think it's important not to listen to people who talk about just work really, really, really hard doing the same thing over and over again, and then eventually you're just going to find that one break and you're going to become like me. When people say stuff like that, I'm no, you're a really specific, talented person who has a really specific path in life that not everybody's going to be able to find. That 100, like we say, 0.000 whatever outlier is going to find that path and get to that point. And it's not to discourage everybody from trying, but again, don't feel bad if that's not.
That reminds me.
You know?
That reminds me of a Bach quote. I'm gonna misquote it, but it was something like, he's basically like, I'm not that talented. Anyone who's equally industrious will do as well as me. And it's like, yeah, if you're Bach, maybe. because sure, he put a lot of value on hard work and discipline, and he was hardcore. Like, there's some great stories about him, how he like walked to a neighboring town 60 miles away to watch some concert or things like. He was just a really like dedicated, driven person. But he also had a little something, this special ingredient that, you're right, I think the major artists sometimes take for granted, the chutzpah, the thing that, the magic. And even if you are a non-Bach and you grind it out, you're not necessarily going to be a Bach.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe you will. Again, there's that one in whatever who maybe will. But again, and that's where I think redefining what making it means and where that bar is. Again, I think there's a lot of people who look at what you and I do and really, well, I know this for a fact. There's people who look at things that you and I do and wish they could be doing that. Mm-hmm. Like they would maybe look at us and go, man, you guys made it. You guys arrived. And, like I think of one youth in particular who I talk to at my job quite often, and he wants to be me. Like he would love to be me.
That's lovely.
And so I have to take that and go, yeah, exactly. Like maybe it wasn't the path that I was picturing when I first started, but this is like 100% what a career in the arts looks like for most people.
Yep.
And I should be thankful for that. And,
yes.
And again, I can't provide you a perfect roadmap of how to get there, but a lot of the stuff we're saying is really the steps and the stumbles that we took to feel comfortable where we are now.
Well, the thing, so this is related to what you were saying about the maybe bad or misplaced advice to just keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying, and then eventually you keep trying and something will happen for you.
Yeah.
But there is another side to that. There's a book I really liked. This one, it's a short, easy book to read, but it inspired me. I think about it a lot. It's called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport.
Ah, yes.
And he makes the argument in that book for instead of following your dream to, for example, become like a yoga instructor, take advantage of what you're already good at and leverage the freedom that comes from that to do other things or to lean into other things. So for example, if your dream is to be a yoga instructor, cool, that's a hard road because you're going to do 6-month training that everyone else can do. And you're going to be competing for really poorly paid jobs at studios that everyone else has. But if you're like, I don't know, you've been doing software engineering for 20 years and that has led you enough stability, money, time, freedom that you can be flexible with your schedule. You can take days off. You can work on your own, on your own dime whenever you want to work. You can, maybe be flexible with the times. That is a more powerful point to be to then do the things that you want to do, as opposed to dropping everything to, I don't know, be this yoga instructor or whatever. And I think a lot of people have this wrestling when they're maybe suffering through their 9-to-5s. And this isn't to say that people should just stick with their 9-to-5s, but the idea was so good they can't ignore you is that people pay you if you add value, and being able to bring value to people is something that usually takes a lot of people a lot of time to practice. Yeah. So the yoga instructor who's doing it for 20 years, they're probably like a really great yoga instructor.
Yes.
But you got to pass through the gauntlet first.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think back on. You say passing through the gauntlet, like all the little incremental value increases that I made in my life in terms of what I was bringing to the table. Right. I mean, when I first started, it was like I have an interesting ear, and some taste, and maybe a few ideas, but I didn't have a lot of skill. Yeah. Like I didn't have, I didn't have a ton of that. Right. And until I developed. It's like almost like I identified the parts that I needed to get really good at. As you're saying, get so good they can't ignore you. And I was like, that's the part that I need to focus on and get really good at that part. And then I'm going to see what happens once I get really good at that part. And so the first thing for me was the audio engineering, the mixing, the production techniques, all that stuff. Get really, really good at that, and then see what happens. And then once I did that, then I was like, okay, now I have a bit more value to offer, and now I can charge a little bit, and I'm going to start working with some musicians and see what happens. Then all of a sudden I got a weird opportunity to be on a film set. And I'm like, well, I haven't done that before, but I guess I know audio engineering and it's audio. So I guess I'll try to, take my skills and see what happens there. So then I went and played around in there for a while. There's a lot of that kind of movement. And and then I realized, like if I get really good now at this, now that I'm really good at audio engineering, I can build on that, and I can get really good at this type of audio.
Right.
I can get really good at what is set audio like. How does that work? Well, let's get really good at that. Let's practice. I taking low paid jobs, volunteering, all these different things until I started getting paid more. And then I got really good at that. And then I had so much value, like you say, to offer that it was like, well, of course people need me, because if you want a really nice sounding film, there's, I'm one of the options in town. Right. So there's something to be said about that. Like, I think that's where the hard work comes in, is creating more value for yourself. Right. And that's where you can say, you do have to grind it out at that in that realm, I think, right? With some balance.
And that's exactly it. Like, not everything's going to be fun. Like, if you're just doing what's fun all the time, then you're probably not sticking with things long enough to get to that level of depth that you're talking about. Because there is you've been doing audio engineering for a really long time now. Actually, I could argue since you were a kid when you were trying to rig together cassette tapes. But if you're doing it for so long in this basically series of incremental gains, there's almost I was gonna say there's almost no way that you're gonna fail, but I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought.
No. Like, I mean, it is giving you the best chance for success, I guess, is maybe that's the way to look at it, right? It's like there's no guarantees on anything, for sure.
Oh, that's where I was going, because that's when you were the depth, right? Because you spent all these years developing just audio engineering, but then you got into film. And there's any field, you can just, the tendrils extend indefinitely.
Yes,
and there's levels of complexity and depth that exist in things that, unless you really stick with them for a very long time, you're not gonna get there. Yeah. And that's where the excellence is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I think it's just really important to just keep your eye on where things are, like, what's evolving, what's changing, and not being like, I mean, our last episode, one of our guests was talking about kind of a serendipitous moment and going, okay, I'm not being afraid to just follow that, and it happens in the arts. Again, I had no intention of being a film audio person. I had zero. I didn't even realize that was an option for me until suddenly a weird opportunity. Thank you, Rob Hillstead. One of my film friends brought on board. Or brought to my attention, and I was able to just jump into film audio suddenly and then follow that. So, it's kind of like, I hope we're making sense. Like, I don't want it to sound too wishy-washy. Like there is, the grinding is part of it. We just have to admit it is. Very few people are naturally just good at something. And so usually you're grinding it, but then you're balancing it with flexibility and adjusting. So it's not just the hard work that gets you there, is what I'm trying to say.
Another piece of bad advice that people will give. I think this is bad advice. I mean, I guess you take it with a grain of salt. It's got its good quality. Is just ignore what everyone says. Follow your own North Star.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. You should do that in a sense, to a point. Yeah. But I think it's really important to pay attention if people are telling you that you're good at something. Because that means if someone's willing to tell you you're good at something, you created some kind of value.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you need somebody else to tell you what you're good at sometimes.
Right, but the idea is other people don't know anything. Got to shut yourself off from. But other people, anything that you're going to do creatively entirely depends on other people.
Yeah.
Other people are going to engage with what you do or not. So if other people tell you this is good, I'm like, oh, that's an important crumb. Yeah. If someone says that, that's like, oh, it's not like denying my true self to lean in towards that, because that's a sign that I've done something, maybe something I didn't even think about, something I couldn't have figured out on my own.
Yeah. I remember actually when I was building my business in the beginning, and again, like I told you, I was wanting to do bands, and I remember getting a lot of rap clients, and then getting more rap clients, and then getting more. And it was pretty clear that I was good at it, and honestly, recording rap was easy. Like, I didn't find it difficult. It was like one microphone.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with a lot of instruments in rap.
No, it's just beats and stuff, right? And sometimes we'd have somebody like record music for it, but yeah, like, I mean, they're going over beats and I'm mixing over beats. So it actually ended up being easier, but I was really good at it. I was just good at it. I mean, it was the kind of vibe that I enjoyed listening to myself a lot of the time. So I grew up on rap. So I just started doing that, and people were, like you say, people were telling me I was good at that, whether directly or
by coming back.
Exactly. And the snowballing of clients that I got from rap. I mean, eventually I got out of that, but yeah, listen to what people say. And I think that's why we need other people to be around to tell us those things. It's hard. Like I think self-reflection is good, but we also need that feedback from other people. I guess I'm thinking of cautionary tales. I don't want to name any names, but I think of other artists who, really thought they were going to be this thing. And then a bunch of people telling them, actually, like this is kind of, maybe it's cheesy, maybe it doesn't quite work. Maybe your goals are too lofty.
And
all
they
these things.
ignore it.
And then they ignore it and they deny it and they go, no. If I just do this over and over again, I'm going to become that thing. And that's, again, there's no guarantee you will. Maybe you're going to get really good at it. But then if you're not going to be flexible, you're not going to see your opportunity to then pivot and be really good at the one thing that you were good at. And in the same case I'm thinking of, that was kind of the ending of that story. Was there was actually a path that was laid out for this person, and rather than choosing that path, they decided just to stay doing what they were doing
and failing at.
Yeah, and when the other path actually had viability and had a potential future, but it was kind of bending to what they wanted, right? They didn't actually want that, which is fine. If you don't want it, then don't. But don't expect to be successful if you're not going to be flexible.
I think it's important to remember, this goes back to what we were talking about with collaboration, but life is relational, and this is a very, I think, Western idea that we silo on islands, and everything that we decide to do comes from us and we exist in a vacuum. I'm much more into the idea right now with the idea that there's an external mind, and that parts of ourselves can exist in our environments and in other people. And it's always in this reciprocal back and forth shaping. So the idea that you don't need to listen to anyone, or, you just choose what you want, is a way to essentially wall yourself off from the rest of reality. It's like you can't get a clearer sign if you're a person who looks for signs than someone telling you directly that you are good or not good at something. And we don't need to listen to everybody, but we get a lot of that feedback if we're looking for it.
Consider it, at least, I guess is the best way of looking at it. Like sometimes the feedback is bad. So
yes,
it's true.
Totally.
So there are those times too. Which is why it's good to have a lot of feedback.
But life also gives you feedback by closing doors.
That too. Yeah. So this is like a really precarious career in that regard, because again, we're mentioning a lot of things that are not 100% absolutes all the time. And there's so much need to be almost like being creative as a career is like you have to be creative. Not just like in the art you're doing, but as a person, you have to get creative and say, well, I tried it this way, but now I got to try it this way, and I got to do it this way, and I got to do that way, and then I got to take this feedback in and make this decision. Like there's a certain amount of like creative synthesis as a human being almost that is something that you can't really even teach. It's like you have to experience it. Yeah.
Dave, do you want to talk about lifestyle creep?
Lifestyle creep?
Lifestyle creep. Yeah, so this is, I think this is another problem that plagues people. If you want to, because lifestyle creep is the idea that the older you get, the more comfortable you get a house, you get nice things, you get used to those nice things, your monthly bills go up, and all of a sudden your 40-year-old self, not even just adjusting for inflation, but you're just paying more to exist than you did when you were 20. So I think about I don't know, I was fairly Spartan when I was 20 and what I needed. I had a really crappy apartment and I didn't have a lot of material possessions, and it was fine. I still enjoyed my life. And I'm not saying that you need to be cool with not having a lot of money, but lifestyle creep affects a lot of people in a way that prevents them from going after the creative path that maybe they imagine for themselves, because they see, okay, I'm making this 6-figure income. I have this big $2 million house. And if I'm working 60 hours a week, there's no room to change. I can't quit my job. I can't scale anything back. You get this sense of but I need my 4 TVs and 20 subscriptions.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So it's really difficult when you've gotten to that point where you're a pretty successful adult, let's say, financially, to do anything creative, even if you have the longing, because you don't want to let go of the things you've already earned. So I think it's a really good practice. I'm actually doing this right now. This is such a small thing, but it's been kind of transformative. We just got rid of all of our streaming services.
Interesting.
And we started renting.
I would die.
No, that's how it feels. But we started planning in advance and ordering stuff from the library, because the library is basically like Blockbusters.
Yeah.
Free Blockbusters, right?
There's tons of stuff.
There's tons of basically everything you want. The only downside is you can't see things in the moment. You have to wait till it's released on DVD. So House of the Dragon, I'm really sad about in particular.
Yeah. I wonder if the library will ever give you like they do this with books already. That you get like audio or audiobooks for free, like a free audiobook subscription. Maybe one day the library will have free streaming.
Free streaming.
Like it'll be like a special
Libraries,
streaming service
get
that's a
on
library
this.
streaming. Yeah, this is next.
Yeah, but the library has so much stuff. So my point of bringing that up is that deliberately downscaling what I have to have less than what I think I need ends up being an exercise in realizing that I don't actually need as much as I think I need.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned this in another episode about the doing less better. It kind of relates to that idea of we need to simplify our surroundings and simplify all these things to allow ourselves that space to do the art. And the same thing goes as an entrepreneur, as a creative entrepreneur. I mean, if you're going to be a creative entrepreneur, you need that as well. Like you say, so lifestyle creep, yeah, you could get to the point where it's just beyond, you're not going to let go of all that stuff and you're probably never going to pursue that thing.
Right. Because you have too much, too many nice things.
Yeah. So you do have to carve out space for this kind of career. You do. And I think I know there's a lot of these memes that go around about like, oh, this person didn't make it till they're 40. This person didn't make it till they're 50. And it's like, that's great. I do support that message. I think, you can try things later in life, but I do want to say that the longer you wait, like the harder it does get for the most
this
part.
reason, if among others. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I realized I had that sense of urgency when my first son, when my wife was pregnant with my first son. Well, my first kid, I should say. When that happened, there was like this thing that went off in my brain that went, this is it. Like, you got to do this now or you're probably not going to do it later. And so that's when I went into action and started studying and started learning. And this was in my 20s. I don't even remember how old I was. It's been so long. My son is 14 now. So I was probably late 20s, I guess. So I even came to the table a little late. I felt like if I would have started earlier, I probably would have got a lot further ahead and not had to burn out so much. So yeah, there is still something to be said about timing. Like, it is important to, and not to make people panic and like, well, I got to do it now. But
because it truly is never too late. But I think you get maybe a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
In a way that you're just not when you're in your 20s.
And again, none of it is bad. Like, I don't want to say that one choice is worse than the other per se. But if you do think you want to do a career in this kind of field, it's much easier to try when you're younger than it is when you're older. So really, if you want to do it, make a go for it when you can, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, actually, one thing that I wanted to talk about, I'm just looking here. I've got some data. So this is, I want to hit home the point that we've been talking about, that there's a lot of non-recording performing artists creative jobs that are deeply fulfilling, that help people, that contribute value to the world, that make you feel, when you're in that relationship where you're creating value for people, you feel good about your life. So that's nice. And one thing that I was curious about some of the Spotify stats. So how many people, how many artists on Spotify actually make a living with the actual art itself?
Like just on Spotify?
Yeah, just on Spotify, or enough that, if they're making this much money on Spotify, they're probably making some from other platforms too, like YouTube. They're probably also at a point where they're able to perform. So if we think about the ways that a musician earns money by performing live. You don't need a lot of Spotify followers to make a good living performing live if you're up for that hard lifestyle. And then you can also make money via streams and royalties.
Yeah.
You can do this with film. You can do this with, things like Spotify. Spotify is just easy because we can get metrics from it in a way that's a little easier to quantify. So the amount of people... So I have a couple different sources and slightly different numbers, so I can't say I'm not an expert at interpreting this particular data. But there's 8 million artists-ish on Spotify, and it's a really small percentage of them that are able to make, let's see. So to earn approximately $1,000, an artist typically needs about 250,000 streams per month.
Okay.
So that feels not too bad, right? $1,000. So if you wanted to make $4,000 would be a kind of lowish median income for someone. You're going to need 1 million streams per month.
Right.
So all of a sudden that feels pretty far.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But it's a supplemental side income. But something to keep in mind is only 21% of people on Spotify have more than 50 listeners. So that's already a pretty dark number. Only 52,000 artists were able to generate more than 10,000 USD. and about 500,000 people reached more than 1,000 listeners. So again, that's a pretty big gap between dreams and reality. While 200,000 artists were able to cross the 10,000 listener threshold, which is right about where Spotify sets the benchmark for professional artist. So that's like 0.1% of all Spotify users are crossing that like $10,000 threshold.
Yeah. Streaming for money, well, Spotify streaming, Apple Music, all those things. It's just not. It's not something that I view as like a really good option for
no, it's a terrible option.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I still talk to a lot of young kids who are making music who think like, oh, if I just put it on these platforms and I blow up, like that's it. It's like, well, no, no, it's actually like the chances of that happening are so low. And even if it does, I mean, maybe you got a lot of streams for a month or so and then it's done, who knows?
This is how I used to think about YouTube ads as well with starting a YouTube channel. It's the same kind of deal.
Yeah.
I assume the statistics would be roughly similar. The percentage of people who are actually making more than $10,000 a year on YouTube through ads would be extraordinarily low.
100%.
But that's how people imagine monetizing things. So even though streaming's not the way to go, YouTube ads is going to be a rare amount of people who are going to, cross that line. Even do I make $10,000 a year in ads? Not anymore. I think I used to.
Okay.
I think I make about, I don't know if I'm technically allowed terms of service to say a number, but it's going to be so approximate anyway. It'd be something like $4,000 a year.
Okay.
So, but I used to get about 500 a month from YouTube ads.
Right.
And then I stopped making videos, 2-3 times a week.
Yeah.
And as soon as the content engine turns off, but that's why if you're an artist, there's a lot of ways that you can make money from your art that are outside of these boxes, which are basically gate kept to all but like the elite, top 0.1%.
Well, and I think you maybe inadvertently bring up the weird marriage between content creator and musician, right? Because here's the thing: is a lot of them become content creators now. A lot of artists are just influencers or something. And so there is a revenue stream there maybe that they don't have quite the same way in Spotify or somewhere else like that, right?
Is this a good moment just really briefly to maybe other people feel differently about this term? I really dislike the term content creator personally.
Yeah?
Because so that one like nails on a chalkboard for me a little bit. I told other people like it, that's fine. I'm not knocking you if you're like, that's me. I don't want to fight with you. But
let's fight.
The reason I don't like it is because it's such a like cold corporate term, I think, for something that is like fundamentally artistic. Like, call me an artist. I'm an artist. I'm not a content creator. I'm like making content for your Facebook platforms and things like that. It just feels like I'm some like bot on a assembly line. Dutifully creating my content for the hungry masses or something.
Which I would argue majority of content creators are that. That's what they are. I'm some bot on an assembly line. Give me views. Like, it just feels like that's the kind of stuff getting created, but not all of it. Not all of it.
Yeah, that's true.
But
that was an aside. Apologies.
No. So we need a new name for that. I don't know. It's the only thing that people understand.
I like creator on its own.
Creator
is like I'm a goddess. I am going to like
creator of what?
I don't know, but it feels like a powerful kind of role.
Well, and that's where we have musician, we have filmmaker, we have all these other terms.
Artist.
So I guess we're just looking for a term that is more specific to I make videos on YouTube and TikTok and things like that. Because there's some people that's all they do, right? Like that's it.
Yeah.
But a lot of that content is like, it's always another type of art in that content too, though, right? There's like a dancer, there's a musician, there's an actor, there's whatever. Like there's always, I guess content itself has various art forms within it too. So I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't need to get like hung up on a term, but just got to air my grievances. Where else am I going to air them, Dave? It's got to be here.
It is fascinating. No, it is fascinating. Like I feel like, I mean, again, it's like we need to come up with societally agreed upon terms for different people, right? And that's you're right. That's one that maybe we jumped the gun on and made it sound too cold. And I think because there is a certain element of
that is true for
that creative career. That's a specific creative career as well. That is quite cold. And I don't think, obviously you have more experience developing that kind of career than I would. Cause for me, it's more, I'm good at the creation of those kinds of videos or good at live streaming or things like that. I'm not so much good at being the personality in them. Well, I mean, I'm not saying I'm terrible, but
That's not the part of it that you're most drawn to, though.
yeah. So again, in terms of making a living from art, you probably have a lot more experience understanding that that path, like what gets you from nothing to followers to, yeah. So
I didn't do anything. Honestly, my core belief, and I still stand by this, is if you are good, they will not ignore you. So I mean, Cal Newport, I'm just like ripping your ideas all over the place here.
Right.
But it's true. I didn't do any advertising when I was on YouTube. I didn't promote myself on socials hardly ever. I basically never did anything with Instagram, never did anything with Facebook aside from like the odd random thing, and it was just I mean, I still feel that way. I have a little bit of I'm going to put my foot down on this. This feels like arbitrary and soulless, and I get that people need it, but it doesn't feel like what I want to do. So I just don't do it. So my whole thing with YouTube is I'm not going to chase subscribers. I'm just going to keep making videos regularly, and hopefully people watch, and that's what happened. So if it's good, people will watch, I think.
that consistency I've heard is good for algorithms too. Like I've heard that if you can be consistent for a long period of time, that's what helps. People want quick content. Like people want it now. We want more. I know that's just
The beast is hungry.
the beast is hungry, right?
So Dave, what would you say to the person who wants to quit their job and start their creative dream? They want to be a guitarist and tour the world.
Be careful. Just be careful. Be like we've said a lot of different things. Like look for the signs when you need to be flexible. Work hard, still grind, work hard, do those things. Take some chances. You do have to take some chances. You have to see something and just go for it sometimes. Listen to others, take all the feedback you can and try to synthesize it. And some of it's not perfect, but some of it is really, really helpful.
Some of it, I think, also is taking steps as opposed to leaps.
Yes.
If you can,
not everything's a leap.
Yeah. So if you can take the first step to reducing the amount of time you have to spend working to have like an okay lifestyle, that I think is a crucial first step. I don't know if you've been through this, but with piano teaching, one of the biggest benefits of it was not only was it a creative outlet where I was learning about teaching and just getting the live action experience of doing it with people and just seeing how people learn music, it also gave me the gift of time because most piano teachers aren't teaching 40 hours a week. It's way too intense to do that. It's really, really demanding, draining. Most like professors don't do that. They're not teaching the whole time. They're doing a lot of research. So even at my peak, I was probably like 20, maybe 30 hours a week maximum. And then I deliberately scaled that back where I was earning enough that I could get by. Again, lifestyle creep. You have to be really careful with that. Are you okay with the smaller house and maybe like less material possessions, less shopping trips, but you have this time? So then once you have that time, then you can invest it building skills and other things. And then you can keep kind of maneuvering that process. But you need the time.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. No, that's I think that the other thing that I think about when I think about that with the lifestyle creep too is like sometimes you can also like withdraw. Like, you can go into something, you can get really into something, and then sometimes you can pull back.
Yeah.
And then readjust. And I've done that a few times where just because you like you say, you've dove into it and then you get comfortable with it, just maybe a new opportunity comes up and you need to just be honest with yourself and put boundaries up and try that new thing.
Yeah. Pivot.
Yeah. Pivoting is entrepreneurs need to pivot. We need to pivot. It's the kind of people we are. We're creative people who like to build things and we can't just do the same thing the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and on that note, I think maybe I'd love to transition to our ending segment. I'd love to hear your artist pick.
So my artist
this week.
pick. So my artist spotlight is related to my business and career. I was involved in a film that was called Resting Potential. And actually the filmmaker, Mark Wehack, he's a professor here at the University of Regina. He was on this show talking about resting potential in the show's previous iterations. So I don't know if we'll have to talk about maybe posting some archived episodes for fun, but yeah, we had a really good discussion about his show. And so what he did is he created a film in several parts. He doesn't want to call it a web series. It's not really a web series. It's a film that's broken up into parts, and it is all available online for you to watch. You can, he liked the idea that you could just digest it in chunks, because he felt like, people don't really watch sit down and watch a full movie as much anymore. They like to binge something or pick up and put down. Like it's not as common for people just to. He's admitting that even as a classical filmmaker, right? So, anyway, he created this film, and I was a part of it. I did on-set audio as well as sound design on it, and it's a really wonderful little film. I'm going to show you a quick little just trailer from it, and then I'll just talk about it briefly.
Yeah. So just to be clear, sound design is like you were composing music for this.
No.
Oh, not
like
this
the
one.
actual
Okay.
soundscapes.
I see.
Yeah, and
Like,
mixing them as
yeah.
well. So sound design as well as sound mix, both.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's a little trailer from the.
Check it out.
I need to tell you something. It's gonna sound weird.
Are you okay?
Lucy, this isn't normal.
I really tried to help her, okay? But I don't think I can now.
I know this is hard for you. You always need proof. But I need you to believe me.
Or a really brief little snippet, and it doesn't tell you a lot in that snippet. It really doesn't, on purpose, actually. So as you can tell, this if you're watching, this came out in 2022, so it's a little bit older. I just feel like it's a piece that deserves a little more attention and a little more traction. So I'd love for people to check it out. I'll put it in the show notes, but I believe it's restingpotentialfilm.com. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
I think that's what it said.
Yeah, that's what it said. Yeah. Yeah, go check it out if you want to see it. What I will give you a little bit of not a prelude, I guess. I can't even tell you much about it. What I can tell you is it's in digestible chunks. It's about this one character's journey through experiencing seizures. And that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to get too far into that. But one topic it does discuss, and I really, this is a topic that really resonates with me, is like, how do you deal with people who claim certain things that are quite out there, right? And stuff like that. And how do you, I guess a good example is like having a parent who's overly religious or something like that and has these really wild ideas about the way things work, and you're trying to like connect with them and bond with them, and like, is there value in their approach? Is there not? I think all of us can relate to people like that in our lives of some sort, right? And the film really resonated with me because I've had that struggle with my own mother and other people in my life where, there's definitely a certain amount of conflict there's certain things about someone's perspective that are really positive and actually do lead to some really good things. But then there's also part of that perspective that might challenge people's relationships with them and
well,
be really
because when you're confronting beliefs that essentially delete you as a person,
go check it out. It's really good. Again, I don't want to say too much about it. I've probably given away even a little too much more than I should have, but it has been out for a while, so you've had a chance to see it for a long time if you haven't heard of it. But yeah, again, I did the sound design. Caitlin Semple was the lead actor. You can see her there. She's a really great local talent here from Regina. And there's a lot of great local talent in this film. There's even, for those of you who are fans of Corner Gas, you'll see a sighting of the mayor of Corner Gas.
Oh, interesting.
In the film, very briefly.
Cool.
But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this conversation today.
Yes, it was wonderful. I hope it helped some people out there. I hope it made some sense.
Yeah, we're not really like, well, maybe we can have an episode like this in the future. You can also let us know. Like we're a small crew right now, and we'd be totally open to whatever suggestions that anyone has for us in terms of topics and how we might structure them. But I think maybe we're resisting the listicle temptation right now.
Yeah.
And because a lot of, maybe the final point I want to make today is that a lot about creativity isn't a, you said this earlier, like a roadmap. There's not like a do step 1, 2, 3 and voila, even though a lot of internet articles are kind of go that way.
Got to be that way. Yeah.
I think we need to get into deeper, more nuanced discussions about mindset and about the things that maybe are less obvious than the 10-step list.
Yeah.
That are really important along the creative journey.
Yeah, because you definitely, your roadmap is going to be different, and you got to, if you have the mindset, you can navigate.
And strategy is such a well, it is an important part, but it's not the only part.
Yeah. So I mean, and if you completely disagree with anything we said today, and you're like, those guys are full of crap,
Pitchfork.
Please do, like, let us know. Like, we're really open again, and this is part of being a creative entrepreneur. It's like we want to hear what people have to say about our ideas and then adjust. Because
with love and kindness.
With love and kindness, of course. Personally, I used to be, again, in a very different mindset about what making it was and how I was going to have a career in art. And I had to have a lot of my ideas changed and morphed over time to get to where I am now. And I'm happy. I'm fine. Like, I don't feel like I missed out on anything by not becoming Taylor Swift or whatever, I'd
pay to see you as Taylor Swift.
Yeah, you'd pay for that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for watching. For those of you who did, we really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. If you're catching us after the fact on other platforms, we appreciate your time, attention. I know that time is a hot commodity, as we've talked about today.
Yes. So now stop watching us and get out there. And
do something.
Do something. Yeah. And then never watch
Quit your streaming services.
Yes. Never watch this podcast again. Wasting your time. No. Okay.
All right. Take care.
Have a good one.
Thanks for checking out this episode of The Creative Coliseum. We'll see you next time. The Creative Coliseum is mixed and edited by David Roman. Executive producers are Allysia Van Betju and David Roman. Gear support provided by Roman Empire Studios. Theme music created by Roman Music YQR. Recorded live on location in Regina, Canada, Treaty 4 territory. Voiceover performed by Sundance Robson. Logo design provided by Danielle Austin. Special thanks Kyle Parkinson, Laura Posadka, and Rob Hillstead. The Creative Coliseum is a Nerd Party entertainment production in conjunction with Piano TV. Now get back out there and conquer your creativity.